Hi, folks. I'm Father Joe Grimaldi. You can call me Joe, and I'd like to welcome you to my podcast. But now, here's our host and friend, Ken Calvert.
Hey now, and hi there, everybody. I'm Ken Calvert alongside Father Joe Grimaldi. And you know how this begins. We'd like to welcome you to the Father Joe Grimaldi Podcast. The Father Joe Grimaldi Podcast, proudly supported by Hoot McInerney Star Lincoln, 12 Mile Road and Telegraph in Southfield. Hoot believe that true luxury should play a bigger role in your life, not just behind the wheel of your vehicle, but also about and out in the world. Should make your life more effortless, preserving your time and energy for what matters most, like your family, your church. To accomplish this, Star Lincoln is committed to the owner experiences designed to do just that very thing. That's the Star Lincoln way. Look, there's no greater luxury than our time, and Lincoln provides us with an effortless way to service our Lincoln. Just schedule a time and place convenient to you, and they'll bring you a loaner vehicle when we pick up yours. Stop on by Hoot McInerney Star Lincoln and check out the new Navigator, the Aviator, the Corsair, Nautilus, and of course the Lincoln MKZ and the Lincoln Continental. Star Lincoln, 12 Mile Road and Telegraph in Southfield. It's the home of the Star treatment. I get up each and every day, like most people do. Luckily, I'm pretty glad to do that, by the way.
We all are.
Get up each and every day. And I was going about my business, and I was thinking about topics for our podcast today. We're nearing 200.
I think that's fantastic.
It's amazing. Thank you, folks, as always, for your support, and we don't do this enough. Please, if you enjoy it, share it with a friend. Tell them to have a listen, because it'll certainly help what we're trying to accomplish here. Just get a lot of people to enjoy the program.
Sure.
Try and keep them nice and tight and bright, about 20, 25 minutes at the most.
Correct.
That's usually the time it takes to run a quick errand on a Saturday, a Sunday, or on your way to work in the morning. So I started thinking, boy, we've covered so many topics. Are there monks that are Catholic priests?
Yes.
That's the topic.
Okay.
I was thinking about this. You know, you always hear the lament, we don't have enough priests.
Correct.
But you have, I don't know how many monks, Catholic priests, who are basically cloistered, correct?
Yes.
They say Mass every day, right?
Yes.
But they could fill a major void in the Catholic Church, couldn't they? Instead, they're all in. I'm going to ask you this real quickly. Some monks never speak.
Whispering, maybe, but go ahead.
All right, well, no, I like that.
Yeah.
Some monks chant.
Oh, definitely.
Every single day.
Yeah, different hours.
Different hours. And that's the communication that they share.
Oh, yeah.
But what about a meal? Do they eat?
In silence.
In silence? Alone?
No, but they're eating in silence.
I am really... The devotion that takes. How does somebody find that in their soul, in their system, in their heart, in their mind, to devote their entire life to that existence? Should I say rhetorical question there?
I'm just thinking, when I think about the whole thing, what is the purpose of religious life? Generally speaking, now I'm not picking out any particular order, but generally speaking, religious life serves to give people a notice that people can live together in harmony. Even though all the people in that community are from different places, have different interests, do different things, but they can live together in harmony. It's to teach the world, we're supposed to be witnesses to the world, that even they can live together with their black neighbors, their Muslim neighbors, whoever it might be. In other words, to teach the world that people can live together if their attitude is good. And so that's generally speaking what religious life is about. Now, religious life usually involves at least 3 vows: poverty, chastity, and obedience. Poverty does not mean that you don't have what you need, but poverty means to be not dependent on material things, but you have what you need. Now, let me speak from my own experience, having been a religious for 31 years. Mm-hmm. When you speak about poverty, We were teachers, so we each had typewriter. We each had notebooks. We each had school books. We each had means of carrying those books to the classroom. We each had shoes. We each had whatever it took for us to carry out our job. But we were not supposed to make those things so important to us that they become the end-all and be-all. So, for example, one of the first things you write in your book as soon as you get a new book is an ad usum, A-D-U-S-U-M, which means basically for the use of. This is to remind you that you do not own that book. It's for your use. But you do not own that book because you don't own anything. Mm-hmm. And so the meals, we would have 3 meals a day, so nobody starved. We certainly had good sustenance, if you want. We all had a room. It was not much bigger than this. Matter of fact, it wasn't as big as this, where you would have a single bed, a small desk, a chair, and maybe an easy chair and a bureau. That was it.
Like a dorm room.
It was like a dorm room. We called it cells in the old days. Well, that's what they were, the cells. The nuns live in cells.
Really?
Oh, yeah, that was the formal name for it.
No kidding.
Well, a cell is a unit, you know, and it was just a unit.
Well, people think prison.
That's
cell,
what I'm thinking, yeah. But it was just the idea. In the old, you have to go back to, a lot of that language is gone. They don't use that language anymore.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, even with a group of nuns, they don't speak of cells, they speak about their rooms. Huh?
Right.
Many of them don't even live with big groups. They live in 3 or 4 people together, and that would be it. So you take the vow of poverty. Now, one of the things that we were always allowed was a monthly allowance. So we would each get, I think in the beginning they started out with $25 a month. And then later on, I know that in 1986, we were getting as much as $50 a month. And basically that was to allow you to at least spend on innocuous things that you may want, nothing you needed. Because if you needed it, you would go to the superior and say, brother, I need a new shirt. And the superior would inevitably say, of course. And so you would get a new shirt. Or I need new shoes, and you would get new shoes. Mm-hmm. And so we lived that way I did for 31 years.
Right.
And there are people that still live that way. It's been modified to an extent, but that's what the poverty means. It doesn't mean that you lack essentials. When we speak about poverty today in general, the poverty in certain areas of the world where they don't have food, no, it's not that at all. But poverty is something doesn't become so important to you that it takes the place of Jesus Christ. You don't want that. Okay, you're supposed to be independent of that.
Right.
Chastity, of course, is pretty obvious, I think, and we live in community, so we're not married. But then it goes beyond that. We have to keep chastity to the best of our ability. Poverty, chastity, and obedience. Obedience basically follow the will of the group, which is usually interpreted by the superior. So the superior would say, we're doing this at 8 o'clock, but that was already established by the community, so you would do it at 8 o'clock. So we would follow that, offering all of these things up to Jesus Christ. Now, when you speak about the other orders that you mentioned at the very beginning,
that's my fascination.
Yeah,
that's where I want to go.
You know what? One of the things I'm going to you probably don't even know this. I don't mean you and John. I mean the people we're talking with. Uh-huh. Do you know that the Jesuits have a lot of brothers?
I did.
Okay.
I did know that, but for the sake of the podcast, enlighten people.
Yeah, in the Jesuits, there are priests, and then there are brothers. So I'm not speaking about, in some orders, you're a brother until you become a priest. No, I'm speaking about people who are brothers for life. So they take the vow, poverty, chastity, and obedience, just like the priest would, but by the same token, they do not celebrate Mass. So in many communities, they ordain just enough priests to take care of the needs of that community. I'm thinking of one order in particular, the Marianists. They run that beautiful school in Ohio, Miami of Ohio.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so, but basically the Marianists, not the Marists, but the Marianists, but the Marists do something similar anyway. The Marianists, usually, of those who want to become Marianists, they usually enter to become brothers. Now, among the group, there's always one or two that will be allowed to become priests. That's because they have to be able to serve the rest of them for the Eucharist and things of this sort. So not everyone becomes a priest of the Marianists. Most are brothers. I think that may be true with the Marists as well, because you have Marist priests and brothers. But now, through the years, the founders of those orders, they dictated it a certain way, but along the time, things change, because you have synods, that we call them in Rome,
right.
But you also have congregational meetings where they make decisions on how we're going to treat ordained and non-ordained and so on. So in many cases, many can become priests as opposed to just a few that are going to serve everybody else. So that in itself has eased up a little bit, and as I say, many of them do become priests.
I am completely blown away by this because of the fact that I just do not understand the trail that individuals take to go in the Marists' direction, the Marianist direction, the Augustinians. I just don't understand what the genesis is inside the human being and why all of a sudden the devotion to Jesus Christ, and then to go into that next area of being cloistered. It's just remarkable to me how they exist, period. How they attract people, new people. Am I making sense here?
Yes.
Who gets that calling? I understand realizing you have a vocation. You want to serve it as a priest. All right? Maybe you do research being a Jesuit or a Holy Cross priest. Do you follow what I'm saying?
I do. But
okay. But to go even further, way, way beyond the pale, if you will, to become really cloistered, barely existing in my world. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but you're speaking about it from a logical point of view.
I am.
Not from what persons desire. If people feel drawn to that vocation, then there's an opportunity for them to participate. For example, what makes somebody become a Jesuit priest as opposed to a Jesuit brother? They're two different vocations.
Yeah, but you research it and you say, I think maybe this is more the area.
Well, you research the other two. I mean, you also research
cloistered life. But who decides to go all in on a cloistered life?
I don't know, because it's the individual that makes that decision. It's offered to them.
Who can't tell us?
Yeah, but they've decided to do that. I mean, in Hawaii, we have a group of nuns who are cloistered. They are there strictly to pray for the success of the diocese. They're not allowed to talk. The only thing they do to survive is because they live in the middle of a field and there's a group of them, so they make peanut brittle, And so in silence...
I bet it's the best in the world.
Yeah, and in silence you could get some peanut brittle for $1, and they make that much money so that they could give it to the diocese so that they could accumulate enough money to live on. They live this very strict life.
Wow.
For the success of the diocese. And they get up in the middle of the night to pray. It's not just morning prayer, evening prayer. You have early matins and so on and so forth. There's all the different types of prayer that they would do.
Well, they have to speak a word on occasion. They have to.
They have to, yeah.
I mean, obviously, a medical situation, you have to be able to describe to a doctor what's going on.
Exactly. And so, for example, there's what they call an extern, okay? An extern is allowed to go out of the convent. And so she's, I don't know how to say this, she's a member of that congregation, but not like a full member because she's allowed to go out. And so when somebody is sick and needs to be taken to the hospital, it's the extern that takes her to the hospital.
She can drive a car.
And also has to be with her in the hospital room.
Wow. Don't you find this fascinating?
It is.
I'm absolutely
But not everybody can
fascinated.
do that. Not everybody can
Are
do
you
that.
kidding me? Not everybody. That's what I mean. I totally get the vocation.
Yeah.
I totally understand you. God bless you, bro. As you said, poverty, obedience, and chastity.
Yeah.
That's a heavy lift right there.
Right.
But to take it all the way, I don't understand how somebody commissions their life to that. Like I said, the confusing part is we can't talk to anybody and ask them about it.
No, but what's interesting is that, well, on any given day, there are people researching the cloistered life because they have an inkling. Not too many of them follow through, but they have an inkling that that's what they want to do. What is it that attracts them? I don't know, but they follow through and they become whatever it is, the cloistered nuns or the cloistered brothers, whatever the case might be. So there are people that do that.
Yeah. So in other words, I would think it would happen more often in European or other countries where it wouldn't be unusual to see an abbey or a monastery or something visual for people to say, I want to explore that. I don't see a lot of abbeys or monasteries that are cloistered anywhere in the state of Michigan, and I don't know if there is one.
Oh, yes, but they're not necessarily beautiful stone buildings like, people look at the chapel over at St. Hugo's, and it's a replica of a French, whatever, but basically it's a beautiful chapel. It's an old stone building, and I think, Ken, what you might be doing is, and a lot of people do this, when they speak about a monastery, what they're thinking about is this beautiful building in the middle of nowhere. Well, here we have, for example, right in Southfield, there's a group of nuns that are cloistered, and what they do is they make the hosts that we use at Mass.
Right. I knew that.
So they do exist.
But and God bless them.
That's what I say.
I mean, people, I don't care who you are, God bless them, because that devotion is so incredibly intense.
But those buildings don't look like...
They're living saints.
Yeah, but the buildings themselves don't look like what we would consider a monastery.
I realize that, but I think that a lot of people think of the monks as chanting and making wine.
And that's what they do.
Working the vineyards. Well, at the end of the day, at least, maybe they get to have a glass of wine. I mean, somebody's got to taste it.
I would imagine, yes.
somebody's got to say...
It's not right the first time you taste twice, maybe
the
three
thought
times.
bubble when you look across the room, Brother Ken looks at Joe and says, that's a good red. I'm going to make a weird comparison and yell at me if you want.
I won't.
It's basically invoking personal, solitary confinement to Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I suppose. I haven't given much thought because, as you can tell, I wouldn't be attracted to it. Religious life in the Catholic Church is complex. There's all different phases of it.
Sure is.
And it's not
I'm learning that every day.
There just isn't one particular case. Yeah. And I think you have to you could do a study of it that would take forever because there's different aspects of it.
Yeah.
You have those that are truly cloistered, those that are semi-cloistered, so that, for example, at one time, our brothers were considered semi-cloistered.
Yeah.
For example, in the very beginning, when I first came in 1962, we were not allowed to eat with secular people, and that was it.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh.
We could only live within ourselves, huh? We had all these different rules.
So I could never take you up to Brady's
as
a brother.
Not at that time, no. What does it mean to be semi-cloistered, especially if you're teaching all day? Well, it meant that you do your job, but you have to be present for meditation, morning prayer, Mass, then teaching, back to the monastery, and then we have evening prayer, and then back to the recreation room. You're allowed 1 hour recreation. After that, night prayer, and then go to bed. That was considered semi-cloistered at that time.
And I would agree with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because we were not allowed to interact with. Well, for example, now I went to a regular college, but it was run by the brothers, and because our rule, we lived there. 100 of us lived on campus, and we was what we would call scholastics. But we would go to school and then have to come straight back home. There was no interaction with your classmates. You were not allowed to interact with your classmates. So you could live there for 2 years or 3 years, whatever it took, and you would not interact with any of your classmates.
Final question for you.
Yes.
Getting back to my fascination with the totally cloistered life.
Sure.
Is there any research out there about the lifeline of somebody that's that cloistered, that rigid in their daily life? I would assume that they would have to allow for exercise, and you've got to take your personal health into account, correct?
Yes.
So I would assume that's part of the program.
Yeah, and I don't know, but I'm sure too.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I would love to know. Like, is their lifeline off the meter, in other words?
Oh, it is. Now, studies have been done. Now, I'm speaking about ordinary religious life.
I mean, it's probably, certainly there's, well, maybe in certain cases, a little alcohol.
Well, did you ever see the obituaries for the Catholic paper?
Oh, with the nuns,
Yes.
It's like 102, 103, yeah.
They live, and you know, what do you attribute that to? Well, they lead a pretty regular life. We might say it's boring, but they don't seem to think that. But it's a pretty regular life. Now, I'm speaking about the old days where they had communities and so on and so forth. So they have prayers in common. They have meals in common. They have an hour for recreation where they get together and maybe turn on the TV. And I mean, there was no such thing as a private TV in the old days.
Right.
That's something new, huh?
Yeah.
So, but yet they tend to live a much longer life than the ordinary person. At least that's what it seems when you read the obituaries in the Catholic paper.
Yeah, and we'll end with this. My aunt, Sister Anne Marie, and both my grandmother and Sister Anne Marie lived to be nearly 100. Now, I don't know if that's good for my DNA. I mean, I've done everything to change that equation, I guess. I've done my part.
We don't know. We don't know.
Last thing my wife wants me to do is live to be 100. I'm grumpy enough right now.
I like that.
But you're right. I've been to that. We used to call it a nunnery in Monroe, Michigan. And that was nice.
Yeah,
it was nice.
True.
Thermostat was set at 78 degrees, but it was nice. I've got to tell you something. This is going to stay with me for a couple of days because I find it fascinating, the mindset, just the entire concept of living that lifestyle. But I want to thank you, as always, for a great job today. A lot of fun. A lot of fun with Father Joe Grimaldi. We will see you next time on the Father Joe Grimaldi podcast.
I look forward to it. Take care. This is Father Joe Grimaldi, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Father Joe podcast.
If you'd like, you can email us. It's frjoepodcast@gmail.com. That's frjoepodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Facebook. Simply search Father Joe Grimaldi. And thanks for listening, everyone.